Yes, I hear him. Yes, and I could see. Now I'm asking Stanislav to turn back and switch on the camera. Please, Stanislav, switch on your camera. Stanislav, please switch on the camera. Could you please start if all the speakers are also present?
Имя подключилось? Да. Спасибо. Мы закончим в 14:30. 13 минут на выступление. Да, уважаемые коллеги, всем добрый день.
Distinguished colleagues, I would like to welcome you to our session. My name is Alexander Zorin. I am the director on the regional politics of the organization Digital Economy, Цифровая экономика. It is also involved into a so-called program, the same called. One of the founders is our regional technological company and also the institutions of the development. Our key task is to form the agenda of the digital development in regions and also in the framework of Russia, and also to implement the best solutions and practices in this field. So in the framework of the International Business Week here in Ufa, the Republic of Bashkortostan, together with the experts and representatives of the research and scientific society, also international experts, we will discuss during our session, which is called How to Live in a Distant Area, the Digital Transformation, the questions which are crucial, burning ones, which technologies and how would they predict our future and influence on our future and life of citizens, the changes in business modeling. You have already heard that COVID-19 pandemic influenced a lot on each of us and also the whole economy. And they are reflected in the activities of all businesses and companies. And today we'll discuss how it had happened, which problems and barriers do we have. And the first speaker would be Evgeny Khokhlunov, the Deputy Director on GR of Yandex company. We would start from the technological company because talking about Russian technological companies, they have technologies, knowledge, and skills to implement and create the best Russian technologies.
Да, Евгений,
Yeah, Evgeny,
вопрос.
I have a question to you.
Какие сегодня уже есть решения в России?
Which solutions does your company have right now, and which would they gain in the near future? How would they influence on the activity of enterprise and also the life of citizens? How would they help to solve the problems provided by the pandemic? Good afternoon, distinguished participants. I also would like to say thank you to the Republic of Bashkortostan. I'm so happy to be here. I'm very thankful that during such kind of limitations, we still have an opportunity to meet each other and discuss the questions together.
Раз, два.
1, 2.
Вот, теперь значительно лучше.
Yeah, it's better right now.
Здравствуйте.
Once again, good afternoon, dear colleagues. Today we would discuss what activities do we
Наш пример, пример компании Яндекс.
do, and I could say that the example of our company Yandex, it's one of the best examples of the future technologies. There are a lot of different projects, and a lot of people are involved into the digitalization, which was previously made in another way. So 23 years ago, we were also founded as a digital company, and digitalization was the basis of us. What is it? It's algorithms. It's the set of rules, the set of the activities implemented by the program. Initially, when it was made, when it was founded, we wrote everything just spontaneously, but after a while, the amount of the rules expanded. And when we are talking right now about our major project, it looked like this when it at its start, and right now it's at least 1 gigabyte of rules, which also influence on Yandex search. At least the amount of 10,000 books. It's the library Yandex is based on. Another good example about the rules and digitalization, the service Yandex Go, or taxi. Why digital? What's digital there? Of course, we didn't make up taxi, but of course, but still it is. It could be explained in 3 steps. First, the driver is waiting, the driver is driving, and then they are reaching the place. We decided to produce the way how to build up the route in that way that you will reach the place faster. That's the rule which we also would like to implement. We also try to implement. That's why we also try to choose the drivers which would be quite close to you. That's why they even have a kind of non-stop orders. They finish one and they take another. So we try to save money and also time, because we try to analyze the places where the cars are. It's all about rules, it's all about digitalization, but it's not the only one thing which we're involved into. We have another service, Yandex Forecast, Yandex Weather. Of course, we have no special people, we have no special experts which are involved into it, but we have experts which receive the data, and then we create a forecast on the basis of it. Of course, if the input data is bigger, our weather forecast would be more correct. That's the basis of our service, and I think it's one of the services which is essential for that people who are working with road cleaning or agriculture and so on.
биометрии.
Also, we have the biometrics. It's about
Правильно ли одета маска.
the ways of conducting the checkup of masks
Мониторинга.
and the temperature of people. We also have the cameras of monitoring of the state
Камера по 30
and of drivers. They also could understand, they could react on the movements of people on
не выспался.
38 points on the face. And if the camera sees that you need some help or need some rest, it also informs you about this. It's one of the cases how people could also digitalize the biometrics data. Also, talking about cameras, we have detection of numbers and road events. For example, Yandex Maps could also create a panoramic view.
Мы называем Яндекс.Зеркала.
And we also have a national panoramas like Yandex View. So people could just go through the streets and also make the video of them, and they would be included into this national panoramic view of Yandex. There could be some road signs, some problems with the signs too, maybe some issues on the roads, and we could do it promptly. Just because we have an opportunity to add this data to our basics.
Видеоаналитика тоже.
Then video analytics is also presented here as the monitoring of the condition of people there. Yeah, on the right, the picture on the right, it's the way how the driver is analyzed and how ready and how
Про тему самую
well is his condition for further driving. Also, we have another project which is called Помощь рядом, or The Help is Nearby. It's the project which the total amount of expenditures was 250 million.
мы за эти деньги помогали
We provided aid to the doctors to reach their patients. We even had just a set of cars for them.
ваши водители
And,
возили.
And there were drivers who brought the doctors to their patients. Now we have a further development of this project, and now people from all over the country could join it. They could just tick off and
9 рублей падать в
provide some money like into the charitable organization for support
по-моему, больше
of the doctors too. There are at least more than 30 regional foundations which help the doctors to move around the city, and not only them, also people who have some health issues in order to have a safe trip back home or some significant places of their cities. I also call for joining our project just because it's quite a profitable and I think good deed program. Also, we have Yandex Market. It's a commercial platform for sales, and I could say that the sales during the pandemic, especially the last half of the year, we have ordered a lot, and we started to order a lot. There are a lot of people who just bring you products, different goods, even coffee. Now we have an abundance of delivery guys. And according to the numbers, you could also see that around the world,
онлайне сейчас на самом деле, ну пока всего
right now there is only 17% of retail in online. But still you could see that there is a great dynamics there. And it is inclining significantly.
онлайн-торговля в России
The online trade in Russia
выросла с 6 до 9%. Понятно, что в России это пока
changed from 6 to 9% of share,
2020 год
but the growth
очень-очень существенно.
was at least for 50% for the last year, and it's quite significant too.
Да, на 45% вырос.
So 45% is an incline
И Россия
for the online trade in Russia. So Russia takes the first place for the growth of online trade.
онлайн-торговли. Пролистываем цифры, которые
So let's go further.
дополнительно. Да,
In addition,
миллионов
70 million
посетителей интернет-магазинов,
of people are the consumers of the goods online
буквально
in different fields. At least half of our country
магазины.
also visit internet shops.
73%
73% of Moscow residents are online customers. 60% of residents of big cities.
последние полгода они существенно
So the growing the growing speed
от коронавируса вот мне на последний
rises significantly.
сильно
Other effects of the pandemic, I could say that the first thing is that
потому что мы стали с вами
the amount of money spent online
в интернете. Если раньше мы
is declining just because even if we buy everything online, previously we were purchasing everything which was quite expensive and unique online. But right now, I could say that an average month spent online right now is lower than previous years.
пару слайдов именно про Уфу.
Several slides are connected to Ufa here in Bashkortostan. The market of online trade has a growth of 43%.
Коррелирует с данными пост.
All in all, it is quite correlative or relative to the data on the whole country. And at least 50% of Ufa residents up to the age of 65 make an online purchase.
Хочу сказать про один тоже интересный
I also would like to mention
и расскажу параллельно историю.
one story.
Вещь пока только
So we have implemented this thing only in Moscow right now.
другая история.
And at the same time, I will talk during the video. We tried to solve one of the complications,
Многие
even if it was quite simple.
тут в 10 утра собрался
When-
на работу, а тебе приходит уведомление. Курьер
At 10 o'clock, you would like to go to work, but then you receive a message that since 10 up to 6 o'clock, you'll get the delivery. And the reason is that the delivery company would send you everything
сейчас
and would inform you only in 2 hours before the purchase will come. And people try to spend this time somehow.
на ближайший наш
Due to Yandex Market and together with Yandex Market, we've reached
ваш товар доступен на
we have reached kind of a
нажмите одну кнопку и мы привезем вашу посылочку через 15 минут.
we've reached the opportunity to
Посылка
make this time, to make this period of waiting shorter for at least 10 minutes. And now you could get your
лишнего времени.
goods without spending a lot of money waiting. Evgeny, thank you. I would add some
о том, что
details. At least 3 days ago, appeared the Yandex Roller robot, which delivers food from restaurant. It's one of the greatest technologies, and I do hope that we should develop this
максимально безопасную
delivery without any contact, because right now it is one of the essential issues. That's why we have this Yandex Roller right now.
Большое спасибо за
Thank you once again, Evgeny. I would like to mention once again that the company Yandex is one of the leading Russian technological company, and at the same time they have a lot of social projects. They are organizers and partners of one of the most essential educational programs,
урок
like learning, digital learning, as when the opportunity, it's an opportunity for students to learn IT, staying at home from the leading companies such as Yandex. Once again, Evgeny, thank you very much.
к нашему
I'd like to address to our new expert today, I'm Storo, it's General Consulate of the United States of America in Yekaterinburg. And COVID spreading around the world has become one of the challenge to many governments in the world, including the United States of America. And here I would like to ask you, what is the effect of pandemics on the economic, social sphere in the United States of America, and what is the role of digital technologies in this respect? And the second question is, what digital technologies can be used for the development of economic relations between our country? Amy, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to speak with you virtually today at Bashkortostan's International Business Week Forum. What better way to talk about living in a distanced world than to demonstrate it to you myself, speaking from Yekaterinburg, where the U.S. Consulate General is located. Let me start by saying our thoughts are with everyone who has been affected by the current pandemic. This unprecedented crisis has hit every corner of the world. I'm glad that the United States and Russia have been able to look past our differences and provide each other medical aid and equipment in our respective times of need. I hope that the people of Bashkortostan are weathering this pandemic. The coronavirus has required all of us to adapt to new ways of doing business and conducting diplomacy. Necessity has made us trust and embrace new technologies as a way to stay connected. And as a result, even after the pandemic ends, the way we live our lives will change forever. For example, in the United States, most school districts and universities have at least partially adapted their curricula to virtual learning. Not only did this step require teachers and administrators to adapt to new ways of teaching, but it also pushed us as a country to take a deep look at our infrastructure needs to make sure all students have access to the internet at home. The restaurant industry not only had to adapt by providing more takeout options than it did previously, but it also had to improve its online ordering and payment systems. Some experts predict that contactless payment will be the way forward, even when the pandemic subsides. This pandemic has proven that e-commerce is here to stay. Whether in Russia or in the United States, ordering goods, services, and even groceries online is as acceptable as standing in queues in brick and mortar stores. Looking at the US stock market, not surprisingly, some of the largest gains we've seen this year are investments in the healthcare industry, cleaning solutions industry, and communications platforms industry. Another industry to see big gains during this pandemic is the household entertainment industry. Subscriptions to streaming services like Netflix, Disney+, and Hulu all saw large gains as audiences stayed home to watch movies and TV shows. Speaking of the entertainment industry, the movie industry has had to significantly adapt to the pandemic. No longer is it entirely safe to watch a movie in a theater next to 200 other viewers. The future of the movie industry must be at home, or maybe at home. In fact, in the US, the major film distributor Warner Brothers has just signed an agreement to stream all of its 2021 films on HBO Max subscription service. Now to speak a bit about my personal experience living in Russia during the pandemic. My day-to-day life in Yekaterinburg very much reflects the way things have evolved in the United States during the last year. Just as American government agencies, businesses, universities, and schools have transitioned from conducting in-person meetings to hosting discussions on platforms like Zoom, Skype, Microsoft Teams, and WebEx, I currently conduct the vast majority of my meetings from Yekaterinburg via digital technology. In fact, this fall, the Consulate General has instituted a program to conduct virtual visits to different Russian regions to stay in closer touch until the pandemic subsides and I can resume in-person travel. My public affairs staff's virtual programming connects Russian teachers of English to native language speakers. And on the 4th of July, our national holiday, we brought performances from American musicians in Texas to computer screens across the Urals and Siberia. I'm particularly proud of our use of digital technology to increase relations between American and Russian businesses. We recognize that private sector growth and the free flow of goods and services is a proven method to achieve sustained economic growth. As we look ahead beyond the pandemic to what will be a much needed global economic recovery, we need to explore every possible avenue to build connections, including using technology to boost business relationships between our two countries. In June, Ambassador Sullivan in Moscow, Ambassador Antonov in Washington launched the first ever Texas-Urals virtual trade mission, together with the U.S. Foreign Commercial Service, regional chambers of commerce in Russia, the government of the state of Texas, and the U.S. Consulate General in Yekaterinburg. The call connected governments and business representatives from 120 entities spanning nearly 12 time zones. The virtual trade mission is an ongoing project, and we are eager to continue this program through a business-to-business matching phase planned for next year. These new models for connecting entrepreneurs and businesses are already showing tremendous potential. Together, we've already built a strong legacy of joint economic partnership in this wider region. The United States has a well-established business community in Russia with over 1,000 American companies employing thousands of Russians and adding great value to the Russian economy. And the Urals and Siberia are also no strangers to successful commercial activity. Bashkortostan's desire to be part of the new Silk Road will amplify the reach of your products and services in the global marketplace. While I'm eager for this pandemic to end, the adaptations and adjustments we have made this year will carry us forward. First and foremost, our embrace of using technology as a way to stay better connected is a positive improvement. There's no replacement for people-to-people contact, but communicating virtually is necessary right now to keep us all healthy. But I've also learned that communicating virtually can represent a more efficient use of our time and energy. Our consular district spans almost 5.7 million square kilometers, and it's impossible for me to physically travel everywhere and meet with everyone I need to meet. While there's no substitute for seeing the Urals and Siberia with my own eyes, virtual visits help educate me on the important issues from Udmurtia to Tuva. In conclusion, it's my sincere hope that through today's event, we can embark on a productive dialogue to share common challenges, to learn best practices from each other, to explore new avenues of partnership, and to discuss how technology can help us achieve these goals. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Emmy. I'm very grateful for your speech. I do agree with you that coronavirus is our common threat, it's a common challenge, and we need to unite and, of course, exchange the technologies because we are solving one common task. And, of course, digital technologies cannot substitute the happiness of live communication, but they allow us to conduct business, to conduct it effectively and on distance, including the framework of the restrictions connected with COVID pandemics. And of course, we're developing digital technologies. They allow us to provide the necessary level of quality of state services, first of all, and in such spheres as education, healthcare, and I know for sure that in the Russian Federation, digital technology is of great priority of development, and I guess it's the same in the United States of America. Thank you once again for your report, and I would like to give floor to our next speaker. We have online Valery Fedorov, General Director of All Russia Center for Opinion Poll Studies. It is known that pandemics has changed and is changing the behavioral patterns of our citizens. It's connected with different threats that the pandemics has. So please tell us the threats are what threats do Russians have concerning COVID? What are the most important of them? And how do our citizens consider the measures that the government introduces and to the restrictions the government imposes, and how the behavioral pattern is changing? Valery, please welcome. Good afternoon. Do you hear me? Yes, thank you. My presentation is starting to work. I'd like to greet everyone, and I'm sorry that I couldn't be with you personally. I wanted and I planned, but a few days ago I didn't feel well. So I'm sitting at home waiting for the verdict, so to say. So I'm a living example of how the behavior is changed by pandemics. So let's begin the presentation. I would like to address to the second slide. The data that I have today received through telephone opinion poll that is called Sputnik, Sputnik. We do it on a daily basis. We interview 600 people in different regions of Russian Federation. So it's no more than 25%, the clearance. So we'll start with what is the role of pandemics is in our information agenda. Here we have results of our opinion polls starting with March till December. And we can see that in March, 57% of respondents answering our question, what is more attracted your attention in the country or in the world or in your life, said coronavirus. It was absolute maximum. Then people started getting used to, and by summer, in June, July, August, and September, it was on minimum level, 8–9%. And starting with October, there's a new interest correlated with the second wave, I guess. 20–23% of this news. So practically a quarter. It's the first place in comparison with other events. Maybe during some special days there were vivid examples. Probably it was like US presidential elections moved away pandemics, but it wasn't for long. So everything is coming back. So pandemics is the main element of informational agenda of 2020. Next slide, please. Fears. You asked about the fears. Yes, we have fears. We have graphs showing how these fears grew up or declined. The possibility to get infected is considered to be high for themselves and for their relatives, around 27%. 19% believe that it's very low. And if we look at the dynamics on the left corner, so we see where the graphs cross. So from October, people who believe that there is high threat of getting infected, it's higher than. So if we think that the first wave was in informational aspect, we were afraid. But today, coronavirus is a reality that we have in feelings. And of course, it is shown on the graph. So today we are more afraid, but we have different kind of fear, rational and irrational. And today we can say that this is a more rational fear. We understand that this is really a disease with consequences, and we see real people not from TV. This is our acquaintances, sometimes relatives, or acquaintances of our acquaintances. So that's why the fear was and is the major concerns of this year, fear for the health, and it doesn't go down, it doesn't decline. Next slide, please. And so it's about the same, won't spend the time. Next slide, please. So what do we do here? What measures we take to protect from coronavirus? Here we have a certain hierarchy. On the first place, from effective measures, we have wearing mask, or so the data is very fresh. We got them on the 7th of December. So 67% of respondents showed that they protect themselves this way from this threat. On the second is hygiene, washing hands, using antiseptic. It's about 30%. And of course, limitation of contact, sitting at home, like me, or somebody even went to the village, to Saratov somewhere. It's about 27%. So it's, and the first top four effective measures is refusal of visiting public events and avoiding using public transport and so on. So 23% use that. All other measures are less effective, less widespread. Next slide, please. Yes, here we have about relations to the limitations. How are they supported or not supported by people? And we see that by December, COVID dissidency and fighting for the freedom of self-representation went down a bit. 88% supported the requirement to wear masks, obligatory wearing masks in public spaces. Many people before used to think it's not necessarily, or a violation of rights even. Introduction of social distance, which is called social distance, but I believe it's physical distance. 1.5 and 2 meters is a widely supported measure. 80% pro. Prohibition of public mass sport events is also very high. So 72 people supported this measure. Closing the cinemas, theaters, and clubs. 71 pro, the rest con. Closure for cafes and restaurants. 2/3, 66% support this measure, and only 28 are against, probably in St. Petersburg. That's a joke. Introduction of lockdown regime. I just remind you that the lockdown, total lockdown in spring was accepted very hard. And the decision of the government just legitimized what was going on in the society itself. But now we can see that it was a limiting character. It's connected only with age, so 65 plus. And this measure has a support. 64% were pro. And of course, distant working, 63% supported, despite the criticism, despite inconveniences, despite difficulties that arise from this fact. But this is a supported limitation. So this is the relationship. So innovations usually cause non-understanding, irritation, and dissatisfaction, whether to take them, accept them fast and enthusiastically. Only a small part of people is ready to do that. Novators, so-called novators. Others either take it as it is or come back later. Especially if we speak about mass changes. We had them a lot this year, and of course, the effect was very high. Here we have the rating of the most irritating measures. So number one is necessity to go and wear masks. As we said, for me, for a person who is wearing glasses, it's not very easy to wear a mask constantly. So we understand that we need it, but on the other hand, it's irritating and very uncomfortable. Second place is lockdown or self-isolation, self-confinement. Of course, it's the reduction of communication and problems connected with healthcare, not especially with fighting pandemics, but I would like to remind you that million of normal diseases, they didn't disappear, and people who suffer from other diseases, they had difficult access to get help, medical help, because the system of healthcare is overloaded right now. Everything is closed. The ban on public events, of course, also irritates people. But everyone will find their own factors. But we can say that we are irritated, but we are understanding at the same time. We understand that these limitations come not because of good life, and we can bear it. So 59% of respondents said that their usual lifestyle has changed, and we will speak about how it changed. We will speak about free time, whether we have it more or less. Exploitation and self-exploitation has increased or not. So 65% of respondents said no. Two-thirds said they have no changes in terms of balance of work, free time, life. They haven't felt it. 22% discovered that they have more free time. Probably it's due to less time to get to work and back home. And 11%, it's people who start working online, on distant, and it's known that the chef, the boss or colleague can call you at 23 p.m. or write you at 6 a.m. So there is no limit between the home and work. And we see that 11% of our compatriots right now have less free time than they used to have before the pandemics. And of course, this is a bit of a frightening factor, and we have to pay attention to that. Next slide, please. The mass entertainment. So we have figures here. Only 29% say that they go to such places with the same frequency as they did it before the pandemics. And 67%, two-thirds, says right now we visit such places more seldom. Next slide, please. Who is under attack? What sectors are under attack? On the first place, it's public transport. 48% think it's not safe today. Malls, trading malls, 30%. Clubs and disco clubs, and even grocery stores. So that's why we have increase in online delivery of food. Cafe and bars, restaurants, 20. When people go there, they see a very frightening thing. There are no people in comparison with previous times. Sport clubs and fitness centers under the crisis right now. They're practically empty now. And theaters, of course. All the rest, parks, squares, museums, exhibitions, and for unknown reason for me, hairdressers and beauty salons are considered to be less dangerous in terms of getting infected with the COVID. Next slide. What we started doing more seldom, I just shown, and what we started doing more often. We started use more often the internet. 33% said from the beginning of the second wave they have started using more internet. Pay attention to the family, children, and relatives. And of course, in the situation of fears and risks, the importance of human communication in the close circle is more demanded. 32% start paying more attention to this closer circle.
значит, публичных поваров, инста-кулинаров и
cooking.
значит, провозвестников
and all others
питания заниматься кулинарией, приготовлением
to do cooking at home.
стали больше
More people start doing 25%. To read books, also a very good number. 24% said that they started reading more often. Education, of course, on online platforms, but not only on them, 23%. And the good news for the so-called old media, 21% started to watch TV more often. Then I will not read further on. Next slide. We're going to the final. Can I have a question? Can you give evaluation or so people see different threats connected with the spread of COVID, threat of getting infected. Is there any request for any psychological help, or there is no such thing, or when the population cope with it itself? Because we have 1 minute left, and I would like to give stress on that. Slide number 14, it's about psychological condition, psychological support, whether you want this support or not, or just to speak out. So we asked this question, and we asked to evaluate whether you have it more often in comparison with other years or not. So 65% have Nordic character. They have no problem because of that with psychology. So understand this element of upbringing, of when you hold your emotions in and don't share. So nevertheless, 14% said that they have this necessity this year. And right now we have a gap between gender and age. In most cases, the desire to share was among youngsters than in previous years. Women and people up to 35 years, every fifth of them had this necessity. The men are just still holding. And the next slide, we asked people to say their thoughts, why there is increase in necessity for psychological help more often. The most common answer was that it is connected with pandemics, coronavirus, lockdowns, and limitations. Of course, this presses the psychology. Second place, they say it's about economics, as Bill Clinton said, drop in life level, unemployment, and so on. And of course, problems with health is only on the third place. So this is the very complicated picture of psychological situation. So the necessity, of course, increased, and this is the challenge to our society, and ability to be necessary and maybe to earn on it. That's it. I'm ready to answer the questions.
Yeah, Valery, thank you very much. Of course, I would like to note that, as you said, maybe I should start that at least 60% of Russian citizens noted that they had changes in their ordinary life, and it is caused by the pandemic. And previously, in one of the speeches, you also told that this year life is changing. Also, our lifestyle is changing, and it would never be the same again. And I agree with you. And as it was said, the pandemic and the limitations caused by it and the tasks to comply with the needs of people, and also it had a great impact on the education. I also would like to say thank you for your speech, and now I would like to give the floor to our colleague. Today we have another representative of the technology company and also one of the leading ones of Yandex, Dmitry Rastvorov, Director on Development of Yandex Учебник or Yandex book, the study book. It's one of the greatest platforms for education. So how do you feel, Dmitry? What about the overcoming the obstacles and problems caused by the pandemic in the sphere of education? What about the formation of the content for students? And also, what are your recommendations for the subjects of the Russian Federation in the system of education in usage of digital technologies for performing the education? Distinguished colleagues, good afternoon. Can I take a remote controller? Thank you. In spring 2020, the pedagogical society suffered and faced great change because now we had to go to the distant learning. And unfortunately, we were not ready for this, not only teachers, but also the developers of these platforms, because they created these resources to realize e-learning, but not distant learning, an additional one. And of course, firstly, each education platform is a tool for a teacher, like a chalk and a board or interactive board, which helps the teacher to organize the educational process, both at school or also mixed education. But at the same time, I could say that as a technology, the remote learning occurred not during the pandemic. For the last 20 years, we have the remote educational tools, and I also had my education on digital learning in 1998 when we sent our first documents online per email. After that, we had new tools, new platforms and resources. And in April 2020, we held research with a questionnaire for 5,000 of teachers who participated in our research dedicated to the changes in the methodology of educating. During this period, there were a lot of new researches, which are quite significant, and most of them were connected to the technologies and internet, and we were interested in estimating the methodology of teaching using digital instruments and also remote learning. What have we learned? And I'll also comment some of them. Teachers are using different tools. At least the average amount of, the same amount of teachers use both ordinary resources like books, exercise books, teacher books, and so on, and other, also half of them use both digital tools for it. What about the advantages of the distance learning and distance education? The fact is that they could provide students with video content, also estimate and evaluate their works online. No difference. What about the amount of experience the teacher has? We could only have some nuances from the point of view of the experience of teachers and also the conditions which they have. If they have internet in this or that area, because in some areas still we have no internet at school. And of course, how could we talk about the distance learning in this case? Which tools and instruments are used by teachers? You could see there on the slide. It's their video lections, which they have to provide the information and also to make the estimation of the level of knowledge. So here are the lectures which help to implement this. Another moment which we have learned is that control and assessment of the knowledge in elementary school and also in secondary school suffered some losses. So in elementary school, the amount of lessons were reduced, especially those which were dedicated to the new study of material, and also the estimation of and evaluation of their studies. Also, according to this, to hold the lessons with the usage of digital resources was quite difficult for most of people. Also, the self-check platforms were a good opportunity available to the teachers, and they used it a lot. I could say that the teacher spends less time for preparation to the lessons because they have a collection of different lessons and tasks, and also they have a great save up of time due to the fact that the platform could also estimate and check the tests, for example. I also would like to give some recommendations here on the slide they are presented. It is a summary based on that research. Of course, we cannot say that we pretend to provide you with universal recommendation which will solve all the problems of distance learning. The first is implementation of the platforms with a self-check or auto-check in just ordinary educational process. It should not be implemented only due to pandemic. It should be integrated into the ordinary educational process and make it regular in usage. Also, while preparation of the teachers, we should also pay more attention to their training and focusing on the usage of the digital opportunities for study. Because teachers should understand and also explain the reason why they use this or that platform or resource used during the lesson. And the last one is the expansion of the usage of the platforms. We, being the developers, we reacted on the challenges we faced, and in short terms, we organized a project which is called Yandex Shkol or Yandex School, which has a combination of several resources. First of all, it's lections, video lections by Moscow teachers, with a broadcast around the country. So more than 5 million children saw that lessons. Another service which is involved into Yandex School is kind of a failure around 9th classes and their preparation for the state examination. So we had a need to produce another resource which would give an additional preparation and training for further examinations. It's the service Yandex Tutor, which was involved into the recommendations for preparation of self-preparation of students for their examinations and main subjects at school. Another program is the supporting program for teachers. I'm a teacher. It's a line of webinars which were charge-free on the platform I Am a Teacher, and for more than 200,000 teachers were involved into this program. Also, we had founding a basic platform which is called Yandex Учебник or Yandex exercise book. So there are several basic subjects involved into this program. Mostly we have mathematics and the Russian language. It's also a free of charge digital resource. And I will also repeat once again that it was created for teachers, but not for e-learning. But I could say that it showed efficiency during the pandemic and lockdown because teachers could also conduct their lessons, video lessons, without any other additional resources. All these projects are unified under the educational initiative of Yandex in order to provide a better educational environment. And since 2007, we have already implemented the first hour program, educational program, which was connected with economics, and at least 2 years ago, we started to provide the resources for just ordinary schools and also elementary school. For the last 3 years, in 2019, we've launched this program, and we plan to support financially these resources in order to make them charge-free for students and teachers of the whole country. Yeah, thank you, Dmitry, very much. If I understood it correctly, so all in all, the Russian system of education wasn't fully prepared to, or was fully prepared to the pandemic. And even the first steps were made before the pandemic, and I understand this. So, and I believe that we should study it in the framework of our authorities. And as our president mentioned, of course, we have some problems and casualties which should be solved in the sphere of education and teaching at schools, as you mentioned at the beginning, which we still have complications. I would like to note, dear colleagues, that previously our speakers said that there is a great impact of coronavirus pandemic on economy, and that limitations also influenced the lifestyle of people, and they even estimate that the impact was quite big. But I could say that our citizens tolerate all that limitations, and mostly they estimate it as a negative consequences which they have. And now I'd like to ask the question to our next speaker today. We have Denis Fominilo, the deputy head of the Association of the Teachers of History and Social Studies of the Russian Federation. He is also rector of State Academic University of Humanities and the RAS. So how do you feel, Denis? What's the positive impact of pandemic on Russian economy? Just, of course, it's not only a threat, but also there are new opportunities. And which features should we take into account in order not to lose these opportunities?
Yes, thank you very much. It's a very good question, and as far as I understand, I can give a full answer, not a brief one. First of all, I'm a historian, first of all, a scientist, and then a manager of University of Humanities. And historians are very seldom guests on business forums because we're speaking about the past, and business and many managers believe that past is something very distant and necessary, and we need to live present and think about optimization of costs of tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. And of course, the stereotype about historians is that besides that we live in the past, we are people of a paper book, so to say. Whenever a historian comes somewhere, he's always with a paper book. He writes on papers. He thinks with standards and stereotypes that are set on paper. And I decided not to break this myth. I came with a paper book, especially for you, dear representative of business and digitalization. I am the member of panel discussion. I brought to you as a gift a paper book that is made within our framework, History of Russia through the History of Regions, that is connected with Bashkortostan. So please don't be afraid. I made sanitary cleaning of that. There are no viruses on paper. So the history of Bashkortostan, where our university served as a coordinator, we made together with historians of Bashkortostan. So you can have a look. But I need to say that when we make our paper book, we understand that without digitalization, without e-formats, we can't do. And if representatives of Yandex, they have allergy on paper, but with this textbook, you can get acquainted with online regime, and there will be no possibilities for getting virus through the internet, except internet and computer viruses. No. I, as a historian, would like to draw your attention to the fact that what we see today, the transition from one format of keeping information from paper into the digits, people used to say no, it wasn't possible. This transition from one source of information to another happened several times within the history of humankind. It happened last time 500 years ago, when from leather we used paper. We start using paper, and the same time periodically we can witness to the different types of spreading, keeping of information. And we witnessed that 500 years ago when, from the technology of rewriting, hand rewriting books, that was very costly with a lot of mistakes. Because if I ask you to rewrite some small book, we understand that the number of mistakes, misspellings would be very, very high. And that can change the sense sometimes, because sometimes if you put the comma in the wrong place, it can give another meaning. So 500 years ago, we had practically the same. From one source of information, we moved to another, and from handwriting, we start use printing machines. And books became cheaper, more available. The knowledge began to spread rapidly, and here today we witness the same. Over the last 35 years, when the paper, as a keeper of information, gives its position to the digits, we see that the printing offices, they're not really necessary to anyone, because in any flat you can put the printer, and 100 years ago it used to be a very big building with thousands of employed people, and today it's not a problem. And the way of sharing information in digits is cheaper, faster, and more harmonic. On this slide, I would like to draw your attention that these processes happened in the mid-15th century, when the Russian state was formed. And very important thing is that why I highlighted the fall of Constantinople. It's not about pandemics, it's about geopolitical challenge. In 1453, Ottomans, very aggressive at that time, and still today they're not very peaceful, they conquered Constantinople. There used to be a city which is called Istanbul right now, and is located on the borderline between Europe and Asia. And in pre-Ottoman times, all the major trade routes from Orthodox and Christian Europe to India and China went through this city. So Ottomans were planning to conquer all Europe at that time. And at that time, they practically imposed sanctions. They prohibited Christians to come and trade under the threat of killing, which increased the prices on spices, on silk, on china, on any kind of valuables that came from the Oriental East. And for Russia, it was also a very big challenge. Within decades, the prices go up 100 times that can be only smuggled into your country with high risk of delivery. So Europeans had to react to this geopolitical challenge and try to find some alternative ways around Africa, around Pacific and Atlantic Oceans, so to avoid Ottomans and to get to India and China and get access to the goods that increased in their value. And at the same time, they had printing, book printing, and the transition from one way of keeping information to another. And this was the geopolitical challenge that led to geographical discoveries and scientific revolution and the necessity of mass education and the culture of the new era of contemporary time, which is still paper, so to say, despite the successes of Yandex. We must thank that period for that. Another natural challenge, it's always a small crisis for the humanity, was always about epidemics that accompanied humanity for the whole time. We have to remember about pandemics of plague in Europe in 14th century, as up to 60% of population died in some countries. And we understand that in comparison to what we witness today, we can imagine the horror people experienced at that time. But thanks to that horror, Europeans survived. We had understanding that we can have preventive work, hygiene, first of all, develop medicine, to look for some vaccines and find effective treatment solutions. And that was done. At that time, 500 years ago, during this transition to new form of spread of information, we had a possibility to form mass literacy because books became available. We understand that the price of books on leather was about the price of one village with 100 peasants, and not a lot of people could afford that in Middle Ages. And a book on paper was available to any peasant who had sustainable income, so they could have this book at home, and there was necessity to read the books and learning not only in monastery schools that had very close circle. A wide mass education led to genetics prove that 0.5% of the world is prone to generate new scientific knowledge, to find new solutions, technological solutions, some creation. So genetically, as Homo sapiens, in majority, we prefer stability, conservativeness, and the comfort zone. The majority of people today don't want any harsh changes. They want tomorrow to be like today. And today to be like yesterday. And if something happens, we are out of comfort zone, we are irritated, we have nervous breakdowns, psychodowns, but the mass literacy leads to booming of science. The more educated people we have, the easier to highlight, to separate this 0.5% from this mass of people that are genetically prone to generate new ideas and innovations. And so, what do we understand? We understand that if we make parallels with the past, we understand that pandemics and epidemics, it's okay, it's normal for humanity. When human societies decide for themselves how to live on. Some choose, and we know a lot of scenarios when people choose to die and the sunset of their civilization. And those who live today, their predecessors chose a scenario of fighting the crisis, finding new solutions and overcoming these problems. So, as a result, we had new media and new communications, and today we see that in transition from paper to digits, in transition from printing to online formats, including distant, during transition from real life to VR, we see that we have a rapid development of AI. We have more free hands of people who are engaged in production not directly, but who can devote themselves to self-realization and search of some solutions for themselves personally and for their family or for their communities. So, my main message is that history of humanity repeats itself many, many times. The interior has changed, the intensity has changed, the speed of changes is changed, but as Romans said, there is nothing new under the moon. And what do we see in 21st century today? We see that really we have information society. The digital revolution everyone was speaking about has become, whether we like it or not. But, of course, information society is more competitive in comparison with industrial society that our country used to live during the times of the USSR. But according to analogy with medieval culture that lived on handwriting and pergament, we understand when we change the way and form of keeping and spreading information, we change the culture. Culture of education, culture of upbringing. In industrial times, when we had factories and plants, where we had to be in uniform at the plant in due time and follow the instructions to keep your hands and legs safe when is changing. The information society demands new rules, new gigabytes, one of our speakers told us about today. And so we will have to change the management models, organizational models, the way we give the material. So it's a global challenge that we have faced. And if we find the solution, then we're moving to a new technological level. If we don't find it, then we are on the crossroad of world civilization, and it is the same as it was 500 years ago. I remind you, Arabs were the most rich, the most educated, the most cultural civilization 500 years ago. Arabic world was an ideal for the whole world. But they refused book printing because religious people said that if we use this hell machine, they will that the devil take all over the world. Even though in Saragona, academicians were arguing we shouldn't lose monopoly for knowledge. We have to get rid of and refuse the book printing. But in France, in the Netherlands, and in England, and in Russian, we start using book printing, and Arabs refused. The first Quran was published by Yekaterina II in Russian Empire. And only in the mid of 19th century, Arabs adopted book printing. And we see how in 300 years everything has changed. Europeans moved to another forms of spreading information, and they became the center of the universe, and Arabs became their colonies. So we have to compare what we used to have and what we have today to understand whether if we don't move to a new digital era, we can follow the Arab way 500 years ago, or what is even worse, different specific societies that remained without texts, without writing, on some stones without thinking about the paper. So this is a very important aspect, and I believe that in 21st century Russia, despite to all our love to paper, book printing, together with Yandex, will move to digital future. Denis, thank you very much. That was a very interesting report. And colleagues, I would just highlight that the idea that we had at the end, that the information society would be more competitive in comparison with the industrial, but changes in culture, including the forms of education and management. So this cannot affect changes in economy and business management. And before moving to our next expert, I would like to say the following. In 2020, RBK had research that was dedicated to the influence of pandemics of COVID-19 on Russian business. So the key thesis of this research, number one, COVID pandemic influenced on world and Russian economy. Due to the quarantine, due to lockdown, some companies had to close. We had decrease of demand, increased the number of unemployed. So even though the restriction measures are abolished continuously, but it is hard to take any decisions for business right now. The second, and the positive sum, COVID pandemics helped Russian companies to start reorganizing business in the way of digitalization. It will have long-term effect and will not stop after the pandemics. Besides, the crisis pushed the management of companies to take hard decisions on reorganizing, restructurization business to lower the costs and develop new directions of business. So, in this case, pandemics allowed to form a basis for future development and occupying new markets after pandemics. So my next question is addressed to our expert. We have head of Secretary of Business Eurasian Economic Council, Stanislav Naumov.
Stanislav, please tell, what are the main technological trends which will also influence on the main fields of retail also, and how it is connected to the COVID-19 pandemic? Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I would like, first of all, to draw your attention to the digitalization of the turnout and of Russia and also other countries which are involved into Eurasian Economic Union. As we see, even if we had closure of all borders and also the problems which were expected in case of the supply of medical items, there were no quite big delays in the delivery. And the reason is the Eurasian Economic Commission. They also have their discussion right now. They've made the priority of studying this issue and also the development of it. They also paid a lot of attention to the taxation union, also creation, the free flow of goods. And of course, all the regulations, they are also implemented by the taxation policy, and it helps us to create a clear understanding of what happens right now around the world. And of course, we would have suffered the deficiency of medications, but the governments of countries reacted promptly on this issue. And it's also a great reaction to the pandemic and the way how to cope and manage the problem in the right way. I also would like to tell what the digitalization of the projects could bring. First of all, it's the branding of medication. We could not change something, and we have to undergo the changes in the delivery of medications. And right now, we would like to make it transparent both for us and the producers. We're working this pilot project for several years, and a lot of pharmaceutical companies invested into the production. And of course, they're mostly based on the pharmacy segment, and also the wholesale segment is involved, and of course it would be quite essential for the whole economic union of Europe and also Russia. So we also plan to monitor the marking of and its implementation for the pharmacy products and just medication, because we should not create new boundaries in the delivery of that goods and the purchases, and it's necessary to make the countries of Eurasian Union not to cancel the marking of pharmaceutical products. And of course, we suffer some casualties, and they are caused by the abundance of information, sometimes overflow of the information, which should be digitalized. For example, the amount of instructions in the frame of turnout of pharmaceuticals could not be digitalized just in one day. So it's also quite, it is of a great significance also the fact that in the sphere of healthcare, the institutions decided to make it easy to simplify the documentation. And of course, the trend on digitalization causes not only just this turn to digitalization, but also to change the legislation to eliminate some of the documentations which should be digitalized too. So this time during the summit, we would like to ask for cancellation of some of the tools which are not working. That should not be the overflow of controlling system, of supervising systems. And when we're talking about the supervision of the market, we should have only one unified institution for it. Making some prospects to the future, we would like to learn which impact would be provided by COVID. And of course, in the sphere of medication and healthcare, we have a TV medicine right now, and the choosing of the right medication, of course, should be provided to everyone right now. And now big pharmacies should be involved into provision of the medication. And the digitalization also provides us with the opportunity to find the new ways to have some clinical researches and post-clinical researches with the usage of the platforms filled with an abundance of data, and which provides the information of replacement of import products by our medications. Maybe they would once help a successful way to, maybe we'll all implement a successful way to struggle against COVID-19. Thank you once again, dear colleagues and experts. Now we should end up our discussion, and on behalf of a non-profit organization, Digital Economy, I would like to thank you for such essential topics raised during our discussion. And of course, discussing the limitations of pandemic. It's not just only limitations. We also have a lot of new opportunities. And I think that it depends from us and from the ways how we could provide the effective and partner dialogue between all the levels of authorities, academic society, expert society, and business itself. So, distinguished colleagues, I'd like to wish you success and health